And now to get started, let me introduce you to today's speaker from Problem Solutions, Mike Ruska. Michael is a technologist and design thinking practitioner with experiences spanning across standards, emerging technologies, learning, and science. As a former researcher at the National Institute of Standards and Technology, Michael provides technology, business model, and innovation solutions to Fortune 500 government and startup companies. Michael speaks at industry events, conferences, and webinars on topics spanning the continuum between advanced research on adaptive learning ecosystems and emerging technology solution product design in a variety of industries. Michael, we are very excited to have you here for our first webinar of the new year, and I'm going to hand it over to you.
Sounds great, Avery. Thanks so much for that introduction, and thanks for having me for the first webinar. And this is an exciting topic. I'm going to share my screen here. Perfect. AI. I'm glad that you're all here to talk about something that I've been working on and thinking about for a bunch of years, and the whole world is kind of waking up to in the last 13 months since OpenAI released something that's game changer and really put AI into the palm, into everyone's palm of their hand in an interesting way. There's so much that you can do, but I think you're all here because you want to determine what is the best way to do it. What is the secure way to do it? What's the insecure ways to do it? Because if we know the insecure ways to do it, we probably don't want to follow those in any way. I do want to note a couple of things. I'm going to be dropping, or Claire or Nick from my team will be dropping some links in. This first link that's on the front here, bit.ly/Mike H articles. There's a whole bunch of articles on governance and strategy and design and things that you need to think about and take on your journey. We all have stakeholders inside of our organizations. These are really useful pieces to share with your team. Again, I'm thinking about the possibilities, especially if they're not attending this talk today. Let's see if my mouse will cooperate with me. There we go. So, we're riding a crazy wave right now. We have an exponential technology that's having exponential changes on organizations. And I think our goal is to ride the wave and not be like the guy in the background there that's crashing along the way. Greg Brockman, co-founder of OpenAI, has it's a much longer quote, but I think this is the salient part of it. The real story here is it's an amplification of what humans can do. Yeah, in some cases, it might replace humans. There's some statistics out there that 85 million jobs will disappear, but 97 million new ones will appear along the way, but it's really the ability to amplify. And I can speak from a personal standpoint. As a company, we decided that we were going to augment our entire enterprise at the beginning of last year. I guess it's been a year already since that happened. And by about mid-year, had AI agents running inside of all of our different processes and helping to support us as humans. And it's an amplification. It's unbelievable once you can get your organization to the capability. Couple quotes to level set things here a little bit. Michael Chu from McKinsey Global Institute says that 50% of the activities that we currently pay people for can be automated by adapting currently demonstrated technologies. So with the technology that we already have and situating inside our organization with some engineering and some change management, we can replace 50% of the things that people can do and do inside organizations. This is massive amount of disruption, and ranging from small, medium to Fortune 500 companies. Everyone's kind of scrambling, to try to figure this out in some ways. So bottom line up front, a couple of things, because I've taken my slides and the talk track from this and ran it through one of our AI agents, and it told me I should tell you this first as the bottom line up front. This is amplifying human capabilities. It's revolutionizing industry. There's a ton of misinformation about AI. I was just chairing an AI event out in Phoenix, and the common number was 30% of the things that AI says are hallucinations. I don't necessarily believe that. If you know how to instantiate it and know how to tame the dragon, it's quite powerful. I think that we're going to type a whole lot less in a few years, and we're going to have much more natural language conversations. There are open source models and proprietary systems models. We're going to take a look at those. Every organization is different and has different needs. So I want to make sure that you know the types and varieties of things that are out there and the network topologies that you might put in place. Key thing, data security and privacy and compliance are totally critical, especially if you're in a regulated industry. There are things though that you can get that will be very helpful, like data processing addendums. I'm going to show you some examples and talk about a little bit about those. Obviously, GDPR and CCPA and things are going to play a role in government governance. We can't get away from our regulatory frameworks. If you want stable and great quality and reliable AI, it's going to require governance, and it's going to require monitoring and reinforcement learning with human feedback along the way. And then the key thing for everybody is the considerations for ROI. Just because we turn something into AI doesn't mean there's no cost involved with it. There's the cost to turn AI supporting us as individuals or teams or business units, but then there's also the cost of compute and the IT architecture. So those are things that you probably want to consider along the way. And then this comes up a lot: copyright concerns. OpenAI is saying that they got you covered, and I think that's pretty fantastic as far as a move. This to also level set. This is an exponential technology. When we discovered the idea of electricity, we had to build generation and transmission and distribution stations. We had a ton of things that we need to do infrastructure wise in order for people to have outlets and be able to plug stuff into them. Same thing happened with mobile phones. We had to find all these rare earth materials and engineer them and build them and ship them to people. Here's the issue. We have every modality that we need for AI to interact with us, with whether it be our mobile phones or tablets or laptops, whatever it is, or even a call in some way. And AI itself can be used to make AI faster. So not only do we have like unlimited distribution potential, but we have an accelerated ability to drive even faster. So Jim Fan is a NVIDIA senior research scientist, Stanford PhD, and had this tweet at the beginning of the year. I think this just pretty much tells the whole story. We're going to be riding this exponential curve. Every year from now on will be state of the art and more state of the art by far. And he says that we're here kind of looking forward. I know from the feeling that I get inside of my own organization, I'm about 5.5 feet up this curve and continuing to climb it. But we're in an unprecedented, technology shift here. So I want to make sure that we cover the breadth of things that we need to at the proper depth. And as Avery said, feel free to use the chat and Q&A. Avery will gladly interrupt me if there's a burning question, and we'll make sure we cover it in context. And we'll also have some Q&A time at the end. So I think, and I'd be interested if y'all wouldn't mind using the chat a little bit. What tools are you playing with? Of course, a lot of people are playing with ChatGPT, but there's a ton of other things that are out there. AI Daddy, Lucas Petty has a list of 600 tools that are out there. Claire, if you can dig up that link to send in the chat, that would be awesome. There's also there's an AI for that. They used AI to search all the AI tools. Then they mapped all of the AI tools to jobs and tasks that people perform. And so for any given job, you could see the percentage of tasks that are supported by AI. It's super interesting. But here's the issue. We're going to look back. Whoops. Sorry. We're going to look back in a few years, like we look at this, things like Ask Jeeves and Yahoo, and say, we thought that was awesome at one point in time. We're going to look back because we're about to revolutionize a ton of things. We can revolutionize learning experiences in company. We can create better than human experiences for customers with awesome metahumans that speak well, that listen to you well, that understand you, that have extreme empathy. I've seen a lot of extremely cool examples of that recently. There's a ton of opportunity for boosting engagement and productivity, and we're starting to see some movement in that market. Imagine Synthesia and other companies are only going to get better with metahumans for communications and for training. There's opportunities for every company to think about sustainability and scalability. Really, it's about staying competitive. Is your number one competitor or the number two person in your market and you're number one, are they moving faster with AI than you? Because if they are, that might be problematic. They might get really efficient as they climb that exponential curve that we looked at. But there's a lot of opportunities for business growth and innovation and democratizing knowledge and expertise as well. So in AI, which has been around since the 50s. We had the dark ages when we were trying to take the smartest people we had in the world and send people to space and the moon. But in decades in AI history, only weeks of progress happened. Now we have decades of progress happening in weeks. Just looking at 2023, we have major releases from OpenAI and Bard and Adobe and XAI from Mr. Musk and Llama, and there's just a ton of innovation. You might think of this as a .com-ish type moment again, except maybe a .ai time. So some of the guiding questions that I want everyone to think about, and you might be thinking about some of these already as we move ahead, is, how do we build digital skills? How can we upskill people? How do we build those knowledge and skills inside our organization? Not that we want to automate every human, but if we can empower all the people in our organization, I imagine we might have a happier workplace in some ways. How do you ensure transparency? How do we know at the end of the day, what the answer is? For some of you, you're in highly regulated organizations. You probably have a floor full or several floors full of lawyers attached to the organization. This is going to become a challenge because not everything is written already or in a document. It's the documentation that goes to train or fine tune or vectorize, your knowledge base that's key. How do we get trust and reliability? With people talking consistently about hallucinations, which I can tell you don't happen with the AI agents that we use unless we want them to, and we give them the power to have creativity. But how do you foster trust inside your organization? And then what are the changes in data practices for the organization? It's one thing to just use an open source tool or use open AI to solve a problem, but how do you not have data leakage and those types of challenges? And then how do you align with the security and privacy regulations? Really, at the end of the day, if you think about it, AI working with a person or a group of people essentially augments the intelligence of that person or team. And the question is, how might we build augmented intelligence teams? Because people working with AI are insanely more productive. I was giving a workshop for a global manufacturing company. 3 out of the 30-ish people there had ever used an AI tool before. We talked through some models. We gave them a little silent writing exercise, like why AI, hopeful outcomes and metrics, and then broke them out into some groups. And I got the groups using ChatGPT. At first, they were using it, asking it for ideas. I said, guys, folks, the answer is in you. It's not in the AI. Tell it who you are. Tell it your roles and your goals, what outcome it is that you're seeking, and ask it to ask you questions to help you along the way. Remarkable results at the checkout from the event. Everyone basically said, we did more in an hour over lunch to think about the future of this company than we have since I've been here. It's pretty insanely interesting. How might we amplify performance if it augments us and allows us to work better, smarter, faster? That changes the paradigm for organizational performance. Oops. All right. So one key model just to kind of think about here is not adaptive learning as a technology, but as learning and training professionals. How can we think about building an organization that is consistently learning and adapting based on that, and where we put people first? We have connected ecosystems thinking. We have connective collaboration. We have purpose-driven design for the things that we're doing because we're seeking problems and using data-informed strategies. Every organization is different, but oftentimes L&D isn't necessarily a value-driven center, and sometimes it's a cost center. How do we get a great perception of value, associated with L&D? If we're the ones that can bring and steward and accelerate AI in the organization, I think we'd increase the perception of the value as well. And so seeking ideas and feedback, focusing on outcomes. But technology is just one component. The technology's here. This is really a matter of engineering and change management, as we move ahead. Just a few level set items. Artificial intelligence is simulation of human intelligence by machines. Narrow AI, you may or may not have heard of it before, but the idea is it does a very specific or similar kind of task. Like, I'm going to upload a picture of my pet, and this AI is going to put it at Mount Everest and at the beach and dress it up like the Terminator and do all these things. That's an example of something like that. Machine learning is the ability for a model to learn without instruction, which is one of the reasons that we're standing on the shoulders of lots of giants here. Gen AI is really what we're dealing with, and right now, because we have text, images, and other media, we're going to see more media. I saw an example a few weeks ago of AI generated newscasts, automatically selected the appropriate actor, rigged them, did the animation, hand gestures, lower third, B-roll, all of the things. It was a pretty insane demo of that technology. We have our large language models like ChatGPT, and GPT means generative pre-trained transformer. Essentially, it's a version of a neural network. But here's the problem, and as it was said in 1962, with great power comes great responsibility. So we've got a real challenge associated with security and IP leakage and those types of things that are out in front of us. So we have some foundational models that you might think about. We've got OpenAI, we've got Anthropic, and Google Bard. There are lots of other ones out here, but right now, more than 100 million people are using OpenAI's ChatGPT on a daily basis. There's a massive amount of adoption inside of Fortune 500 companies. And this plays a role in not just the technology sector, but like way broader industries as well. There are things to consider when thinking about the models, like transparency and trust. OpenAI, ChatGPT scores about 48% on the transparency model, which is pretty good. And that's just understanding how it works and why it does, what it does. But there's going to be a rapid evolution that's here. And, as far as a future outlook, with as many .com sites as we got, we're going to get as many AI applications that are out there. There's going to be a storm of agents and applications, and we've got to really think about ethical and the privacy considerations on this. I'll probably say it more than 3 times, but if you're using free AI tools, they are not free. The data that you're putting into them is going to be training them in some ways. You've got to have other configurations if you don't want that. And then you also have to consider legal aspects and copyright concerns. And at the end of the day, also AI safety, risk and compliance as well. There are other LLM options, that are out there. There's a range of them, and I think we're going to see the LLM wars here for a long, long time. They're open source and they're private models too. Examples like Llama and Llama 2 and Falcon. These are models that you can use, you can put in your data center, or you can put into another data center, a secure place, whether you're using Microsoft Azure or AWS Lambda or something like RunPod to run those. And there are more narrow and focused models. You hear people talk about the size of some of these models and the compute that's required to run them. There are a ton of different environments that you can run these in, and I'm going to walk you through some different network topologies that you might consider that will help with the concerns for security and privacy. But at the end of the day, every organization is going to need to adopt some AI in some way, and they're going to need to do it in a secure and private way as well. And then there's also challenges. How does that model know your business? How does it understand your business and your nomenclature along the way? So Stanford developed a transparency index, and the idea was to understand how a model was trained and the methodologies, that were trained on that. Llama 2 scored quite high. GPT-4 scores around 48% on this. But the bottom line is there's lots of room for improvement along the way. But there's a lot of importance around transparency and trust and accountability and AI as we integrate it into society and other industrial spaces along the way. So data privacy. So what are the big concerns that are out there? Well, I don't know if I told you this yet, but if you're using free AI products, you're training the stuff. You're training them. Reminder. So it's important to understand any of the data usage policies in any of the free AI services, and whether that's using your data to refine them, their data retention policies, and data privacy. So there are some challenges out there in highly regulated industries like finance and healthcare. Got You've got a range of different challenges that are there. At the end of the day, though, it needs to be transparent for you, for your organization, and for your users about how data is collected and how it's used along the way, and building best practices and building governance and thinking about things like data anonymization and secure data storage. At the end of the day, for a lot of folks too, you're going to have to deal with the EU AI Act. I saw a few people here on the intro, and GDPR and CCPA as well. So the good news is that most models offer some type of DPA or data privacy addendum or data privacy agreement for their customers. This requires getting an enterprise account. If you have the $20 a month account or you have an API account, you are not guaranteed the same level of privacy, associated with it with a DPA. So moving towards an enterprise account is key. Lots of Fortune 500s are Microsoft shops are deploying Microsoft Azure and deploying their own versions of GPT 3.5 and 4 as well. If you're using free GPT and GPT plus, I'll say it again, your data is not private or protected. Doesn't mean you can't do it. I'm going to show you some prompt obfuscation techniques in a little bit. Claude, totally not private, totally not protected. Google Bard, also very, 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 similar situation along the way. So this is an example of a data processing addendum. This is just the header opening with an enterprise OpenAI instantiation. You can get this. This ensures that your data is not used for anything. Your data is segregated. Your data is private. Your data is secure. It's SOC 2. It's all of the stuff encrypted in movement and at rest, which is totally critical for where you're going and really how you need to be getting there. So just to give you a little bit of a notional idea. So on the left is, we'll say, XMart as a company. And we have databases, we have ERP systems, we have CRM systems, we have all these types of systems. There are two things that are here that are called out kind of specifically. One is a vector database, and the other is a knowledge graph. So understanding, what is worth knowing? Like, would a company want to take all of their emails ever and push it into something in their model? Probably not. So what is the corporate knowledge that's critical, that needs to be understood, that needs to be relevant to some AI model? So that data readiness piece of this is an absolutely critical element. Vector DB takes documents and information and produces something you can almost think of it like a filter. So it knows everything about the company. So me as a user, I come to my AI agent inside the company. I ask it a question. It contextualizes that from the vector database or the knowledge graph, which understands the mappings and relationships of the memes and for a corpus inside of an organization. So it's contextualized. Then you can go out if you have an enterprise license and a DPA and you want all the encrypted and you want SOC 2 compliant stuff. You can contextualize that, make your calls to GPT, or if you have another DPA with another model. And then when it comes back, gets recontextualized again with your vector database and knowledge graph, so it's relevant to your business, and it uses the words. We all know inside of any company, we also have another language that we speak, which is that company's specific words and meaning. It's the vector database and the knowledge graph that allow you to do that. So this is kind of a notional. I don't want to host GPT. I want an enterprise license model with GPT, but I want to contextualize everything inside of my organization relevant to my organization, but using the power of GPT, because I need a big model and I want to manage a ton of complexity. So that's one way to think about it. Another way to think about it, and as I mentioned earlier, there are companies that are pushing out their own LLMs inside of their own corporate cloud infrastructure, whether it's hosted in Azure or AWS or any other solutions that are out there. Now nothing is leaving your firewall. All of the information about all of the historical information you have inside the company, your vector database, your knowledge graph, those items that are used to contextualize and map to the data in the company are just communicating with an LLM that's running in your corporate cloud along the way. This gives a really tightly secure integration. There's absolutely no leakage in this case because everything's inside of the corporate firewall. It gives enterprise level security measures kind of consistently, and takes the same compliance with regulatory standards that you have currently and reinforces that, whether that be GDPR or for those that are subject to HIPAA as well. It allows for really good internal data control and management, and it balances accessibility and security along the way. And the good news is your IT team is in a bunch of control, and I think we all are going to have to deal with executive management, and we're all going to have to deal with IT at some point. And IT's job is to protect the enterprise, not necessarily empower it with information. Your job in training and learning is to empower the enterprise with information. So there's a challenge there. I'm interested where people are, in their journeys along the way. The Probably an option for some folks here is to actually just host your own private LLM and just use it inside of the corporate firewall. Rather than using GPT on Azure or anything on AWS, you could find the right LLM that fits your needs, have your vector database, your knowledge graph, and be hosting your private LLM, which should be smaller. And this is probably the cheapest in terms of compute. I would put, depending upon how much usage you ultimately get, I would probably put this last instance here as probably potentially one of the more expensive, and this instance too with the foundation model, because you're paying for all the tokens that you're using along the way. But this last one here, there's no cost of tokens. There's just the cost of hosting. So this may be the most efficient model in some cases for some people. I call this the tennis ball problem. So if you took all of the compute in the world, whether that's GPUs or the rise of NPUs and whether we're using CPUs, and we packed all that into a tennis ball, how much bigger would all of the world's AI compute be in 5 years? It's a much bigger ball. I don't know how big it is, but I can tell you it's exponentially bigger because of the companies that are moving towards AI compute solutions. They're out there. So, there's some other things to consider in terms of data privacy, training data poisoning. So if we want the best data and we want our model to speak our language, we have to be very careful about the data that we use to train, fine tune it, or that we put into our vector databases or knowledge graphs in some ways. It's totally essential to do that. Sandboxing is also a good idea, and that's essentially controlling what is coming out of the LLM and ensuring that it's not giving up too much. Because if we train something and fine tune it or use vector DBs, there's a lot of information that's contained in the model. Is everyone privy to that information? Do things like role-based access control come into the models? Have several projects also in the DoD space where this is becoming quite apparent that not everyone should know everything all of the time. There are other challenges too related to supply chain. Aside from some of the technologies you have, there might be other technologies in that stack that are helping with digital signal processing for your AI outputs and contextualization, and also considering customer and confidential data in those challenges as well. And also considerations for plugins. And so having continuous testing and having stringent guidelines are kind of critical to unpacking those elements. So data obfuscation. If you don't have an enterprise version of ChatGPT or some other model, or you don't have one of the network topologies that I went through with you, you can still use it. You just have to put variables in there in some ways. And so I'll give you an example here of prompt obfuscation. So this is enterprise, and now we scrub it down and we put variables in there. And now you can send it to the LLM and it can solve the problem for you and bring it back and then add to that. So, there are some other considerations to think about. Secure network topologies. This is all in your IT folks. Keeping your data within corporate firewalls, using encrypted data transmission along the way. Like I said about having DPAs for your enterprise LLMs, there are internal controls, much like you'd have in finance, that you need to consider, related to privacy and disclosure, and thinking about limiting the amount of data exposure only in secure transactions that you might have out there. But the other thing that I think we're all going to have to live with is regular privacy audits and policy reviews that come with that along the way. So, there's some legal and ethical sides of this. There's certainly a lot of discussion around copyright, and OpenAI is saying that they will defend you. But they're also defending themselves with several lawsuits that are out there related to violating IP protection and other proprietary information along the way. Well, once again, free AI is not private. Do not leak your IP to free AI tools. I know there have been a bunch of articles that have been out there, and I have a lot of contacts that say, yeah, I email me stuff from work to my personal account, then I use my personal computer, then I replace our company name with Acme, and then I do this, and then I do that, and then I do the work, and then I email the work back to myself. I'm sure there's some IT guy at their organization that is losing their mind over that in some ways, but it's happening. And if we don't afford people in our organizations the opportunity to use safe and secure AI, they're probably just going to use it anyways. So I'm going to share a resource with you from the Open Worldwide Application Security Project. So LLM security, or AI SecOps. There are a number of things that are challenges. Number one is prompt injection. So can I add extra text inside a prompt that makes the AI reveal something it shouldn't reveal? There's a recent story about some AI researchers that were just adding an extra space in between words and it tricked it up. So there are challenges there. Insecure output handling, poisoning of training data, denial of service. If suddenly your organization relies on AI and someone does a DOS attack on you, it's a real challenge. AI is going to impact organizations. It's going to pair up with individuals, with teams, with groups, with business units, with the executive team. In some industries, supply chain is already starting, has already been optimized or is being optimized by AI and machine learning. However, we're going to see more supply chain integration, and you can imagine a type of issue that could occur if some supply chain data across 40 suppliers for a critical, airplane or something like that had a challenge. So you've got permission issues, data leakage, excessive agency, which essentially means the AI is just too darn powerful and knows too much darn stuff. And then over reliance on insecure plugins. The URLs on here, and it'll be in the slides when you get them. But if you just scan this is a resource that you're going to need because this is what's going to help you have conversations with executives, have conversations with IT along the way, and be able to really focus in on getting past the objections. I'm sure that some people are tasked here to try to figure out this AI, or their organization might be going down the road. The faster that you can make the journey, I think the better it's ultimately going to be for your team. So a couple things to think about related to guardrails. You want to ensure that there's quality, reliability, and compliance for everything. So that's part of technology. That's part of security. That's part of data. That's part of people. It's part of governance and analytics. There's a whole set of cross-discipline work that needs to come together here to have governance for enterprise AI. So in terms of governance, things that you need to think about building is the corporate governance policy. This isn't something that's done in isolation. This considers how we talk to our customers about how we, as a company, use AI. This includes how we talk to our employees about how we use AI and where we don't use it too. I mean, are we using it in promotion and selection and HR related items? There's a number of things in the EU AI Act that cover the human capital consideration side. There's also risk management. The IT folks love this. That needs to be considered. Depending upon what industry you're in, you either have more or a ton of regulatory and compliance related data. Your governance needs to ensure that you're protecting sensitive data. We all have sensitive data about our people. We have sensitive data about our clients. We have sensitive data about our trade craft and our IP as well. The other element in governance too is ensuring that things are audited and monitored along the way, and that deviations and aberrations that might occur are understood, they're reported, they're followed up on, and policy is enforced at the end of the day. So there's a broad set of considerations that need to be tackled on the AI governance front. And this is kind of the core, but there's a whole lot more. I'm sure you could go ask ChatGPT to help you develop your AI governance stuff. I'm sure that someone will take that experiment as a task. The team at ELB Learning has an AI readiness assessment. I would encourage you highly to contact them. I'm sure Stephanie will provide a link or something in the chat for you to get more information about this. At the end of the day, this isn't a singular journey, and we all have a lot of work to do inside our organizations. It's helpful to have a guide, a docent, a Sherpa, if you will, that helps you to understand from the outside in, what are your current systems and capabilities? What do you need to do? Maybe there's like one game changer thing that you need to build for your organization as far as a proof of concept. It's a quick win for the organization. Or you may say, we're not sure what to do. I think we should do something. We're not sure. So ELB's AI readiness assessment can help move that ball faster downfield, but also consider the important things related to change management and how do you roadmap and guide that journey along the way. In terms of maturity, there's a little bit of a map here. I think most organizations are in the reactive to emerging state. Reactive organizations say, we know there's a thing called AI, but we don't have a strategy. And yeah, Tom's played with it and Jill's played with it and did some cool stuff. Someone wrote a marketing campaign. This is a sort of reactive organization. Organizations that are emerging are saying, we're going to use AI and we're going to use it for these things and we're not going to use it for these things. We're going to start here. We're going to build our governance. We're going to do pilots and we're going to continue to iterate. As I said last year at this time, we said we're going all in and we're going to build the things that make a difference for us, whether it's designing learning experiences or designing products, or unpacking a statement of work, or developing an R&D plan. We have agents that are highly specialized and tuned. So we put ourselves in the operational slash optimize category, where we're really starting to get into some of the continuous improvement elements there, and moving beyond the production environment and upskilling more into driving innovation, inside of the core business. At the end of the day, I think everyone wants to climb this hill. Question is, how do you do it smart enough and how do you do it fast enough? So there's a little bit of a roadmap. The base level is really articulating the vision. The three questions I ask are, why AI? What are the hopeful outcomes if you did it? AI will make us happier. AI will make us more efficient. Cool. What will that get you? Is it better retention? And then what's the metric? How will we know that we actually did it? And then really designing some goals to accompany it. And if you have vision, you have goals, then you can start to identify use cases inside the organization. Start with the pains, not the gains. What are the things that are time consuming? What are the things that are subject to error? A lot of people want to start with the jobs, but I tend to give the advice of start with the tasks, start with the things that people do. Almost think about your organization as a set of processes that either consume an artifact and produce an artifact, or consume and produce multiple artifacts to produce an artifact in some way. So looking at process, looking at the artifacts that are created in the organization will give you some idea of what those use cases are. In terms of value, if we do something one time a year and it's really hard, I don't know that you want to. I don't know that you're going to get a lot of value out of optimizing that using AI. But if it's something that happens 100,000 times a year and 10,000 of those times is very problematic, that might be a place that could have value for an investment that you could quantify the ROI in. But going and building up this stack really helps to articulate the business case, the value around it, and the use case. Because at the end of the day, if we think of AI as a thing, we think it's really different than anything. But at the end of the day, AI is just really good software, and instantiating really good software inside of our people and processes and systems inside of the organization. That's the formidable challenge that's in front of us with this powerful tech. So we're coming up here towards the top of the hour, and I see a whole bunch of stuff in the chat which I haven't seen, and I see a couple items in Q&A. And Avery's coming in here to rein things in here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Michael. That was awesome. A lot of very great, informative information. Got some questions here, so I'll just get us started. And a reminder to everybody, you can pop open the Q&A panel to ask your questions. Okay, a couple questions here from Corey. About, does AI, like paid AI, keep your content similar to the free AI? And then also, when you talk about transparency, where do they find that information for what AI, for the AI that they are using?
Yeah, no, great questions, Corey. So the free ones are using your data. There is no doubt, and they will tell you that they're using your data. Even if you're paying the $20 a month for the OpenAI upgrade, they're still using your stuff. It's being incorporated into their. You've got to have the enterprise versions. That's the only way that you using a model outside of your organization isn't training the data. Now, if you use Azure or AWS's versions that they have running with those models, and then they're in a private secure cloud, that's not training the data. Those models don't have access to that data. If you're using your own instance of an LLM like Llama inside of your organization, there's no access to that data because it's all contained, inside of your corporate firewall.
Thank you. And Sam had a question. What are some enterprise AI options for smaller companies?
Yeah, absolutely. So I get this question a whole ton. It's like, all right, figure out what you really want to do as far as use cases. Pick the one use case. Using something like Llama or Llama 2 and running it and either running it inside of your organization, build out your own GPU infrastructure, or use one of the many that are out there, but one of the ones that we like to use is RunPod. And because we can have an LLM up and running in minutes for application, and it's completely secure when you do that. The only people that have access to it are you.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. A question here. How do I sell my IT and execs?
Oh, yeah. So Claire, pop that bit.ly/Mike H articles in there again. You have to sell the value, and you have to help appease the fear. So the value of augmenting the enterprise has a range of different outcomes in terms of not just individual performance, but organizational performance. Some organizations, some of the large organizations, C-level teams that I talk about revenue per employee. That's their metric. And they want to increase the revenue per employee, which means either get more from the people we have or get the same from less people, in some ways. And so understanding what the motivation and intention of the executive team is for the organization helping them understand the ideas that if we augment our enterprise, we can beat our competitors. There's a lot of value propositions from a business perspective that are critical, that are there. I think the other one that I shared previously, and I said scan that QR code. That's going to help appease the fears, because if you tell them, here's the value of thinking about this, here's what the outcomes and impact would be for not just us, but us in our position in the industry. Oh, by the way, here's all the stuff that can go wrong, and here's the recipe for making sure it doesn't go wrong. I It's not a surefire sell, but it's much better than coming in and saying we should do AI. It would be awesome.
Thank you. Okay, let's see here. Where can I find resources on writing strategic prompts to get the results I want from AI?
Oh, there's a okay, so there's a range of answers for that. YouTube University. That's that's the number one place that I tell everyone to go. Yes, it's not a place, but it is a place, because that's where the best information is. The question becomes, though, like, is it, how do I know it's right? Right. And so there are things out there for Coursera and Udemy have a range of different courses that are out there. But the quick fix that I recommend to a lot of people is talk to ELB. They have a boot camp, couple hours, and suddenly everyone on your team is running like a ninja.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question here from the previous question about selling your IT. And Carla's saying we have the opposite problem. They are sold and everyone is running in separate directions, working independently on the same outcomes. How can I convince them we need to have a strategy?
Strategy? We don't need a stinking strategy. Yeah. Well, so that's an interesting situation, and I've seen this situation before. So you got a bunch of people, you don't have any rules, there's no governance whatsoever. A lot of people are motivated, they have a bunch of ideas, they're doing a bunch of stuff. You need a leader. That's what you need. You need that charismatic instigator that says, "You're doing cool stuff. You're doing cool stuff. You're doing cool stuff. Let's brown bag this." You got to form the social fabric before you form the data fabric, before you form the strategic fabric. My advice to everyone's like, find a team, find a dream, and build stuff. So like that's happening already, but they're building stuff and everyone has a dream, but there's no team. You got to build the team. We all learned this lesson when we were kids building forts. Find a team, find a shared dream, build stuff with spare parts, see what works, see what doesn't, and then keep iterating along the way. So now it's just a matter of well, whether you formalize it or make it an informal tribe as far as a team, but that way you don't have duplicity of efforts. That way you have shared lessons learned. That way you can build on top of each other's work. You could even differentiate in the areas of research and prototyping that people are doing as well.
Okay, we have a question here from Blaze. In April 2023, OpenAI released the option under settings to disable data history and training during a conversation. In that mode, data isn't saved long term and isn't used to train OpenAI's model. Do you use this mode, or do you have thoughts about whether this claim is reliable?
So I'll say this: I barely ever use ChatGPT, because it and other language models are baked into agents that I interface with. And the agents I interface with determine the nature of the content, assumes what context I'm coming from, assumes what the implied fidelity of the response is, and may select a different model. It might run it in GPT 3.5 or 4, or might run it in a couple different models. And then because it's really complex and it needs to be perfect answer, and then merges those together. Oh, that question disappeared from my stuff. I so I haven't used that feature. I don't I'll say this: unless you have an enterprise paid version, your data is being used somehow.
Thank you. Okay. Someone's asking, can you come teach this stuff to my team?
Yeah, I mean, sure, absolutely. So this is part of the ELB AI readiness stuff that they perform. and build out an understanding. So there's this stuff as far as questions. There's a much, much deeper dive on the idea of an augmented enterprise, the design patterns of an augmented enterprise, and that's what the ELB AI readiness assessment does over 8 week period. Roughly. So there's learning sessions, there's prompt engineering workshop sessions, there's building sessions, there's prototyping and thinking sessions to get people moving. I think it's the fastest way to get moving.
All right. Thank you so much. Trying to see if we missed any questions here. Do you
Oh,
have?
I see Carl's question. Any thoughts on President Biden's executive order on AI? Why did it take so long? That's the first thought. I worked with ChatGPT back in like March timeframe. I created personas from the White House of Office of Science and Technology Policy, Department of Commerce, Department of Labor, and then I had them game out and then write what the president's policy should be. It was not significantly different. I mean, I think it's at the end of the day, government's going to weigh in on things, right? When we have the Wild West, we start to make rules and we start to make laws and we start to think about things like governance and policy along the way. So I think having it is good. At the end of the day, there's going to be a ton of AI that goes into our military, DoD, and even the civilian agencies that are out there. And so having some stance on it is absolutely critical. There's a lot about transparency in there. There's also some DoD orders and policy items that are little that have come out and more are coming out related to this because it is strategic national defense at the same time. But I think it was a good amount of stuff, but a little later than necessary. It could have happened faster, but everything's moving so fast. So thank you, President Biden.
Okay. And Marilyn is asking how to hide their IP to help with security.
I could probably use a little bit more context on that question, but
Okay.
I'll just make Marilyn, if you want to add something, I'll just waffle and riff until you add there. Because IP could mean IP address, and if in that case, I just say you could VPN and obfuscate who you are and your location. You could spoof your IP address, but you're probably asking how do you hide the intellectual property of your company? So that would depend on what your configuration was. I'll just make the assumption that you're using OpenAI. So I would go back to that prompt obfuscation. I work at Acme Company. I'm a chemical engineer. I make marshmallows. I need a new recipe for marshmallows. Can you help me think of creative things that I might put in my marshmallows? But marshmallows isn't real. It's just food in general. And Acme is not real. I'm really work for whatever company makes some kind of candy, in some ways. It's challenging, right? Because what you want is something that's immediately useful to you. Um, oh, you said, oh, okay. It was IP address. Thanks, Marilyn, for that clarification. Um, yeah, I don't want to tell you how to hack your IT department. You can connect me on LinkedIn and message me though, and we can chat.
Awesome. Well, Michael, we are almost out of time. Is there anything that you want to leave the audience with? Any last remarks?
Yeah, find a team, find a shared dream, and just start making stuff. And you're gonna need to make the business case. You're gonna need to overcome the IT police at the same time. But if you have a couple examples and you have some quantifiable value proposition of like, hey, we make weekly marketing summary reports, and we took all the messages from our Slack and we put them into GPT and we did this. We know it's not really secure, but our marketing intellectual property isn't that critical as far as competitive intelligence in the organization. Check this out. If you have all three of those check boxes, why we should do it, we did it. We proved that we saved 27% of one person or a team's job. And here's all of the objections IT could possibly have and a recipe around them. You're gonna have a much better opportunity to move forward.
All right. Well, thank you so much again for your time. This has been super informative. I am actually going to share a quick poll with everybody while I close out the session for the day. So let us know, rank your level of AI implementation and needs. All right, and I would also like to invite all of you to some upcoming training industry webinars this month and next month. You can register for these programs and watch past webinars now at www.trainingindustry.com. All training industry webinars, including this one, are pre-qualified for a credit hour for SHRM, HRCI, ISPI, and CPTM. Some additional resources for our learning leaders. What is CPTM? It is the Certified Professional in Training Management program that assists you in developing core competencies that will empower you to manage the future training needs of your organization. You can participate in a virtual practicum from anywhere in the world. Find more information at trainingindustry.com-training. I would love to meet all of you in person here in Raleigh, North Carolina for the 2024 Training Industry Conference and Expo. TICE is where learning leaders like you gather to forge new professional connections, learn from each other, and address your most pressing learning challenges. Re-energize your learning initiatives at TICE 2024 this June. Early bird registration is now open through the end of March. You can learn more at TICE2024.com. And one last reminder that an evaluation survey should have popped open in another tab in your browser, and we would greatly welcome your feedback. Thanks again so much to today's speaker, Michael Ruska, and our sponsor, ELB Learning. And thank you all for your time and attention from Training Industry. I'm Avery, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.